This is the Brew World Order Podcast.
Welcome to the Brew World Order Podcast. My name is Mike Curtin. If you haven't subscribed yet, well, step on up and give it a try. Happy Independence Day. I hope you're all enjoying your freedom by listening to this lovely episode of the Brew World Order Podcast while floating in a pool somewhere, taking in some sun rays, and sipping on an ice-cold, delicious brew. Thanks, America. This is episode number 48, and in this episode I sit down with Stephen Monahan, co-owner of Little Brother Brewing Company in Greensboro, North Carolina. Stephen tells us how they were able to open their brewery debt-free, how he doesn't really feel the need for a mental break from work, and the funny story of how he got so drunk that he wound up adopting a new best friend that now greets all the guests of Little Brothers by jumping up to them and asking them for belly rubs. Sounds like a sweet boy. Well, getting drunk and forgetting that is not the worst thing that can happen. I've done much worse, and I'll keep that to myself out of pure embarrassment. But what you shouldn't forget to do is subscribe to the podcast, and then sit back, crack open a beer, and enjoy this podcast. Hey guys, I'm Mike Curtin. This is the Brew World Order Podcast, and today I'm with Stephen Monahan, co-owner of Little Brother Brewing Company in Greensboro, North Carolina. Stephen Monahan grew up in Chicago, Illinois. In 2003, he worked on his undergraduate's degree at the University of Denver in Colorado, where he started to find an interest in craft beer and homebrewing. After college, he wound up heading down to Charlotte, North Carolina, where he worked as a restaurant manager, and not too long after obtained a job at a homebrewing shop where he would soon become manager. While working at the shop, he came to the realization that he really wanted to become a professional brewer. To make it happen, he interned at a brewery and attended the Master Brewers program at the Siebel Institute in his hometown of Chicago, and also in Munich, Germany as well. After graduating in 2015, he was hired as a head brewer at Little City Brewing in Raleigh, North Carolina. And soon after that, he would cross paths with Jeff Colley and Daniel McCoy. The three spoke about their interests and passions for opening their own brewery, and they soon decided it would be a great fit for them to work together. And with that, they would soon be on their way to opening what is now known as Little Brother Brewing Company in Greensboro, North Carolina. They officially opened their doors to the public in November of 2017. And Stephen Monahan is here with me today. Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
All right. So it was almost like a year or so between the time when you decided you wanted to become a pro brewer to the moment you got that head brewer's job at Little City. So what was that journey like for you? And how much of a role did drive play in that?
You know, I was kind of getting burnt out on the hospitality industry, and I knew I needed to make a change, or I was just going to kind of end up with the same job that I had been in for the previous 7 or 8 years. It was a singular opportunity to pursue my passion. And so I just kind of took it, and, luckily I was able to springboard my educational credentials into, an opportunity to open a brand new brewery in Raleigh. And, having that, experience, working with the contractors and all the subs, and, having to manage my own, production, ordering all the raw materials and, speccing out equipment and picking out my own system and kind of figuring out what was best suited to the space, was an incredibly valuable, educational experience, because I was kind of the, lead point of contact for a lot of these contractors.
Right. So during that time during the process of opening the brewery, from the start to when you actually opened the door, what do you think was the most challenging part?
I think a lot of it is just the logistics of getting all the things that you need done on time, and kind of coordinating that with the general contractor and all their subs.
Right. Like,
for instance, they can't put the PLC in until the 3-phase electric is in, and you can't do that, and that they only have certain dates scheduled, and the electrician can't come because he's taking his family on vacation or something.
Right.
And so that sets everybody back by 4 weeks. And then there's other people that have, they have their vacations that they have to be pushed back. And then, it's just, everything is really, really tough in terms of construction. Just when you have so many different people working on the same project.
Right.
They have a myriad of other projects that they're working on too. So, it's difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And where did you guys go about finding the capital to open your business?
Here at Little Brother?
Yes.
Jeff and Daniel, we're pretty much, completely funded by, Jeff and Daniel. They have had successful careers in the real estate and, insurance business. So this is kind of their their side project. They both still have full-time jobs. So we were luckily opened this company with no debt.
Awesome. That's pretty amazing.
That's great.
So besides, I mean, I know you were open for about, I guess it was I said it was about 3 or 4 years, right? Three years before COVID hit. How did you guys go about adjusting to that when all the shutdowns and everything happened?
Well, we realized really quickly the only way we were going to be able to stay afloat is to really aggressively market to-go sales. And so we had this tiny little 16-ounce can seamer that just sat on the bar. And so our bartenders went from, serving a full tap room to just pumping out as many cans one at a time as possible from our draft system.
Right.
From that little seamer. And at first we were selling it out the window, and doing deliveries, pretty much, twice a week, and then doing, pickup, the other, 7 days a week. And, that kind of kept us afloat, when we're pumping out 300 or 400 cans a day sometimes, and maybe twice a week having 30 or 40 deliveries. It would take 6 or 7 hours just to go around town. So that really kept us afloat. The community really rallied around us, and that worked out great, until, all the restaurants were allowed to open again. And then all that demand for delivery just completely evaporated.
Right.
So, we waited a little while longer, probably a month after everybody else opened, just because we wanted to keep our staff safe. But at that point, we had no choice but to open back up for regular service. So we put into place really stringent distancing guidelines, and started serving out of plastic cups. This was all before we even knew that the virus wasn't really spread by shared surfaces. So we're everything that ever got touched got hit with like isopropyl alcohol.
Right. Taking the proper precautions.
Extreme. All the windows were open in the dead of winter. So it would be like 40 degrees in here, and people would have to be wearing their winter coats in here. But that was like kind of our commitment to keep people safe. And actually, people really appreciated it.
Right.
And it was still, we were still down like 60%, but it kept the lights on. So.
Right, for sure. So what do you think's been the hardest adjustment you had to make from actually being a head brewer at Little City to actually being a head brewer and part owner of a brewery?
I'll say one thing. My system at Little City was a lot nicer. I had rakes, and it was a bigger system. And here, where we kind of started with kind of a bare bone system, 4-barrel electric, the process is a lot harder. We have more fermentation capacity as well. So I just have to turn this 4-barrel as often as I can. At least I've got to try to brew 3 to 4 times a week in order to keep up, especially because we're expanding so aggressively right now.
Right.
So the biggest challenge has just been like the raw labor. But I just hired my first assistant a couple days ago after 4 years. Wow. So hopefully I can catch my breath.
Yeah. That sounds nice. And speaking of catching your breath, how important is a mental break for you from everything?
Not that important to me. I'm a worker. I like to work. And so for me, it's just like, my personal life and kind of my mental state is kind of is taking a back seat to try to work towards a more long-term goal. I suppose it's kind of an old-fashioned attitude, but I mean, I could have taken it easier on myself years ago by hiring an assistant, but I wanted to make sure all our processes were completely dialed in, and there was zero compromise on quality.
Right.
And if we hadn't been expanding so quickly now, I probably still wouldn't have hired an assistant. But with me working 7 days a week, there's still not enough hours in the day for me to catch up in terms of production. So I'm forced to do it.
Yeah, right. You want everybody to taste that beer and then taste it again and say, that's the beer I remember. So who do you think's inspired you the most in the beer industry?
My friends from beer school, and then all the relationships I've made in the industry have been the most inspirational to me, because I couldn't be anywhere near I am without support from all my friends. Like those first few batches before I even started at Little City, I called in favors from literally everyone I know and said, hey, can I come into your brewery and, brew a batch with you and ask you a million questions in between? And everybody was really receptive. Nobody ever told me no. So I did that at like 15 different breweries before I even brewed my own first batch at my own spot. So that helped me be really better prepared, having no commercial production experience, being in charge of an entire production. That was essential. Gotcha.
So what do you think's been the biggest lesson you've learned so far being an owner of a brewery?
There's no substitute for hard work, and
that's true.
The quality is something you can't cut corners on. I believe that quality is a result of 1 or 2 or 300 tiny little things that you can choose to either do or not do. And the more of those things, if you decide not to do 3 or 4 of them during a brew day, then it doesn't really show up in the beer. But the more tiny little cuts you make in quality, the more shortcuts you make, the more it shows up in the beer. And so just having an uncompromising attitude towards quality and towards, not just in your process, but also in the materials you use. We use 100% Epiphany craft malt. So that is local maltster out of Durham that uses all North Carolina local malt from local farmers. And not only is it, help bring sustainability to North Carolina in the agricultural sector, but the quality is also, in my opinion, superior to the big national brands that a lot of other brewers are using. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we're the only ones in the triad that are doing that. So I'm very proud of that. We pay a little more for it, but I think it really shows up in the glass.
Very cool. And what do you think brings people to your brewery over other breweries in your area?
Well, we have an awesome location. We have a top-notch staff. My whole background has been in hospitality, and that's what I majored in college. So I've always been, a good brewer, but like one of my true passions has been hospitality. So making sure that, we have the best service at all times and nobody's ever calling it in is the number one thing for me over beer quality.
Right.
And then we have a beautiful space. It's small, but we have an incredible mural. We have these incredible mosaic tile floors that are 80 years old. This building has a lot of history, and we had some great designers that really figured out how to tie everything together in the space.
Gotcha. And what do you think's been one of the biggest changes in the last 5 years in the brewing industry?
Probably just, stylistically what people are into, There's certain things where you kind of gotta jump on the trend or you get left behind.
Right.
And then there's other things where you don't really want to compromise to emulate the market because you kind of feel like you're losing a bit of your integrity. Like a lot of people are doing seltzers right now, and that's something I refuse to do. Right. Because I don't think it's craft.
Good. Yeah, I'm not big on them either. I got to be honest.
If you want to count calories, drink vodka.
That's true too. It gets you there quicker. So, what was your gateway beer into the craft beer world?
2004. It was Tommy Knocker Nut Maple Brown. Those guys are out of, I want to say Longmont, but I know that's wrong. It's on the way up to the mountains. This is beautiful little brewery, and they had like this maple nut brown. It just tasted like nectar. And at that point, I was a freshman in college.
Right.
My favorite beer was like High Life. So they really opened my eyes, and then I started getting into like Breckenridge beers, Great Divide, and then my first homebrew batch was pretty similar to a lot of brewer stories. It was like one of those Mr. Beer kits,
right? Yeah,
and it was just this gross stuff. You don't even boil it; you just throw a packet in like this like plastic keg-looking thing. And then, like, we decided to throw a bunch of just, like, raspberries at it to make it a raspberry wheat. And, of course, like, it got infected and just turned sour. And not in a good way.
Yeah, right. But I think Tommy Knocker is in, it says Idaho Springs here.
Idaho Springs, yes.
Idaho Springs, okay. And Great Divide, by the way, Great Divide, one of my favorite breweries. I love most of the stuff that they do, if not all. They're really good.
I think in 05, I probably drank more Titan IPA than anybody in Colorado.
It's a good one. I like that. I'm a big fan of the Hercules that they do.
Hercules is great.
Yeah. So, if you had one homebrewing tip to give to somebody to pass it on, what do you think it would be?
Oxygen-free transfers and purging your bottles before filling. Those are the two most key things. So if you're transferring from primary to secondary,
right,
you want to purge the carboy you're going into with CO2 first. So you have to have a CO2 cylinder first, and then you kind of want to use CO2 to push the beer with using a racking arm out of the primary and have a tube going all the way down into secondary, so you don't create a lot of splashing, and you just basically avoiding aeration as much as possible on the cold side, because that's when homebrew like tastes like homebrew. When you do it right, that's when homebrew tastes like pro brew. Purging your bottles before filling them with CO2 will increase the lifetime, like the shelf life of that beer, by like 6 months. It's incredible.
It's good to know.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll have an IPA that tastes good for about like a week,
right,
and then it's going to taste like oxidized garbage after that.
Right.
And you'll see it in the color, too. It'll get really dark.
Definitely going to use that. What's next for your brewery? What does the future look like for Little Brother?
Well, we opened our second location in Graham, North Carolina, Little Brother Brewing, Barrel and Bottle, in November of 2020. And then we are opening our third location in August, and at LeBauer Park. So we're gonna have this cool, almost kind of kiosk building that we rented out. And so we're gonna be serving beers right on the park for people to enjoy while they're there. And we're gonna be right across from the Performing Arts Center. We're gonna be programming that lawn a lot. It's gonna be called Lawn Service, actually.
Very cool.
We're also gonna be doing coffee drinks and baked goods.
Very cool.
So we're working with Counterculture Coffee and some creamery, I forget, for ice cream, but it's going to be really good.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
We also have a couple more concepts in the works that may come to fruition in the next few months, so definitely keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned. So if you had advice for someone that was opening their own brewery, what would it be?
Don't expect to retire on it.
Gotcha.
If you're in this for the money, you're in the wrong game.
Good to know. So did you happen to have a funny story for us?
So in 2018, for Halloween, we did an adoption event.
Okay.
And it was a great time. It was kind of raining out, so we had all the crates under the alcove stacked up against the wall outside, so people could come check out the dogs and see if we can get some adoptions. Actually, after that event, we got 30 dogs adopted, so it was really great.
Wow.
But anyway,
great.
I was just trying to help out, taking them down the street and letting them go to the bathroom and everything. And then I started, kind of taking them to the bottle shop across the street, Beer Co., and just hanging out with them and having a beer, another beer, and another beer. And then pretty soon I was drunk. And I woke up the next day and I had this text message. And it was like, hey, we're on our way. And I was like, on our way with what? And I got a picture of this dog. And I was like, oh my God, I got drunk and adopted a dog last night.
Oh, no.
And since then, he has become our loyal taproom dog. He greets everyone at the door and jumps up and snuggles with anybody that sits on the couch. And howls at all the fire engines that come by, which is frequent because we're right next to a fire station.
Right.
He's probably has better name ID than most of our bartenders.
Nice.
Maybe even me.
Yes. So I have a little segment called Quick Fire 5. 5 quick questions, beer related. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. If somebody walked into your brewery, one of the beers you'd recommend them that they try?
Oh, at this moment, Hermanito, it's a jalapeno serrano pale ale, and tomorrow I'm tapping a farmhouse ale, which is a blend of 5 different Brett strains aged on Chardonnay barrels for a year. We're really excited about that.
Interesting. Favorite brewery other than your own?
I love High Branch out of Concord. These guys are awesome.
Okay. Favorite?
Also, Town and Protagonist in Charlotte are fantastic.
All right. Favorite style of beer?
Barrel-aged sour.
Barrel-aged sour. Last beer that you drank that blew you away?
Recently, I was fortunate enough to be able to drink my favorite beer of all time, so it continues to blow me away. But that is the Malheur Dark Brew. It is it's like a dark champagne style. They actually it's a Belgian brewery, and they send all their bottles of this dark Belgian style over to Champagne for like traditional champagne aging. They turn the bottles, it's called riddling and everything. And then where it undergoes like a secondary fermentation in the bottle. It's incredible. I served it at my wedding.
Very nice. And you have 1 keg of beer to hold you over for a 2-week quarantine. Which beer are you choosing?
That would be one beer, something I can drink a lot of. Dolly from Protagonist. It's a honey blonde. It's fantastic.
Well, Steve, that's all I have for you, man.
Well, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast. Steve Monahan, co-owner of Little Brother Brewing Company in Greensboro, North Carolina. Thank you. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to my interview with Stephen Monahan, co-owner of Little Brother Brewing Company in Greensboro, North Carolina. Whether you're passing through, you live in the area, or just visiting a friend nearby, you should definitely check him out. Give him a follow on social media while you're at it. Every other Sunday I'll be releasing a new episode, so subscribe and you'll never miss one. Also, be sure to check us out on social media for updates on the podcast. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast. You stay safe out there.